other participants within these sessions as you get different perspectives around how they handle different matters within their professional life. We also hope that you're able to build a community of people that will cheer you as you undertake your goals, that will support you and hold you accountable as you pursue that whichever you want to pursue. And for us to benefit the most out of the sessions that we'll hold, would want you to provide us with feedback, with comments, with questions that will allow us to have better sessions into the future. We have planned that these sessions will be held 4 times a year. For 2023, we'll only have 1 session, but as we go into 2024, we'll plan to have more sessions so that we benefit from these sessions. Today's session will be 1 hour, 30 minutes, and it will be hosted by Joao Lourenco. So for now, I'll hand over to Janice Sambaza, who is the WeCAN chair, to give us a few words.
Thank you, Vimbai, and a warm welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us for our first group coaching session. And thank you to Joao for generously giving us his time, and not only his time, but his years of experience that we will all delve into getting insights regarding our own careers. As WeCAN, one of the objectives that we have is growth enablement of our members and the ability for us to share experience and be armed with the know-how of how to navigate challenges, be them professional or personal. And what we've seen in most instances is through the challenges we might think are unique to ourselves, we're not alone on this journey, and we're not the only ones who have gone through the circumstances that we would have. It is always good to hear a voice which tells us that this is how I navigated this challenge, or this is how you can view this challenge. And it is an experience that assists us in not only throwing in the towel and potentially quitting at the extreme end, or giving up, rising the ladder, which is why we're seeing very low numbers of women in the C-suite, not only in Zimbabwe, but globally. Historically, we've had one-on-one mentorship sessions, and this is something that is still ongoing. But what we would implore to our members is those who would want to coach either other members or students, please reach out to us and we'll match you with those who would want to be mentored. So please let us know and we will pay you up for all our benefits. So this session, as Vimbai has already alluded to, is a group coaching session. And coaching is different to mentorship. But in coaching, it's a learning experience that creates self-awareness and drives transformational change, providing critical challenge and support that we all need in our careers. And you'll find that most global leaders have a coach where they have regular sessions discussing whatever is happening, whether it's professional or personal. Of course, this is a group session. We hope to still get the same benefit. Joao will try and double click on the areas that we want to delve deeper into. But if you feel you need a one-on-one engagement, please do contact him. We'll share his details in the chat, and he'll be able to guide you into how you can have one-on-one coaching sessions with himself. That's me. I don't want to take any more of the valuable time of Joao. I just want to say thank you for being with us. And Joao, thank you for joining us. We look forward to the insights that you will share with us. And I'm also seeing some men joining us on the call. Thank you for logging on for this platform, and we hope you also get to benefit from this session. Thank you. Back to you, Vimbai.
Thanks, Janice. I realize I didn't introduce myself. My name is Vimbai Macheka, and I am a member of the WeCAN committee, so it's a pleasure to be hosting you here. Before we start the session, I just want to introduce Joao to everyone on the call. Joao is a chartered accountant who's registered with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Zimbabwe. He is also an EMCC certified coach and mentor, so he's the right person for us in this session. John has been a partner with the Big Four accounting firms since 1988. Some of us, maybe myself, were in diapers at the time, so that speaks to the level of experience that Joao has. His leadership roles include regional head Africa and Europe, head of tax for Africa, and head of tax and legal in various countries in Southern Africa and Central Asia. He has extensive experience in corporate tax and international tax in Zimbabwe, South Africa, and other African countries in the SADC region and Kazakhstan. He has advised large multinationals on cross-border matters, inbound and outbound structuring, group reorganizations. He has also performed a number of multi-jurisdiction tax due diligence assignments that cover South Africa and the neighboring countries. His area of specialization includes corporate tax, consulting, compliance, and tax of countries that are operating in various sectors. He also has considerable experience in areas such as strategic interventions, operations, and financial management. He's also got experience in the sectors of oil and gas, mining, agricultural, industrial, and retail. Joao, it's a pleasure to have you here, and over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Vimbai. And Honourable Chair, Janice and Vimbai, thank you very much for putting this together. I think, although you know it, maybe the group doesn't, but I'm fully committed towards, women joining the C-suite, as Janice has said. It's just something that I've always felt throughout my career. And Vimbai, thanks for sort of like noting that I've been around since 1988 as a partner. Makes me feel really, really old. So my kids always say that I'm how can your ideas be relevant today? But the thing is that experience and, really why I'm here, and I just want to go into the little coaching environment a little bit before we just press on with the topic. The reason why I'm here is to impart that experience, because I've always wondered why there's a retirement age, because throughout one's career, you have a mix between energy, intelligence, and experience. So depending which side of the curve you're at, it always becomes a learning experience. So as I got towards the end of my career, well, to the twilight of my career, I don't want to say the end because I'm still working, I began to realize that if you don't give a platform to younger people, there's a whole host of opportunity and creativity that you're just shutting out of your whole professional experience. So that was a wake-up call to me to actually pay more attention to everyone's ideas. And that's when I got really involved in coaching and trying to understand what makes people tick and how do you get the best out of people to suit your organization. Now, I understand that we're all CAs. Some of us are still in the profession. Some of us are out there in commerce and in this industry. And some of us are not in Zimbabwe. We're in Europe. We're all over the show, which is a testament, in fact, to how resilient our nation is. So I just want to congratulate us on that, but also want to tell you all a little bit about coaching. So coaching is more a unique experience because every single one of us is different. We all have different strengths. We all have different weaknesses. And often, if you're at the early stages of your career, there's only one thing focused on your mind, and that's getting ahead and getting as senior as possible and so on. And that's totally justifiable. Don't be ashamed of that. But as women in industry or in the profession, I'm sorry to say this, and I'm embarrassed, but women are always at a disadvantage. And one of the reasons why I agreed to do this was to try and help you navigate around those things because I'm sort of like familiar from, dare I genderize it, sort of familiar from a man's point of view. And, you know, the one excuse is maybe men just are so insensitive to the differences between men and women that has been overlooked. But I like to think not, because I also like to think that I didn't. And I always wanted to have the right balance of skill with creativity and experience. And women bring a different skill to the table, let's be honest. So that's why I'm here. And the first topic today is about emotional intelligence. So before we move on to the topic, if I could just echo what Janice has said. If you do want individual sessions, you know, I'm really here to help. So, you know, we can always tailor it. Don't stop yourself from being coached because you're worried about how much it'll cost. You know, it's something we can always talk about. We can always talk about that. I'm not hard and fast or any of that type of thing. But, you know, obviously in the profession, we all understand that our time is our value. We sell what's in our brains, you know, so let's always be mindful of that. But again, you know, I'm here to help. So coaching is a one-on-one. We are going to try a group coaching session, but let me tell you that because we're all so different, it's all going to be quite generalized and quite high level. So if I'm going to try now to attempt to share my screen, so bear with me a little bit. As Vimbai said, I've been in the game since '88, so I'm not all that technically proficient. So let's try this. Just shout when you can see my screen.
I can see your screen. Thanks, Joel.
Oh, fantastic. So let me get it onto full mode. There we go. Good. So Greydeck is basically the consultancy that I'm running at the moment. So that's not really all that important, because you will get my contact details later on in the session. So I suppose we should start out, and I'm just going to do a very, very short presentation, and that will be roughly about 8 to 10 minutes, just on what EQ is and what are the different types of Qs, which are the quotients. But emotional quotient is the EQ side of things is, in my view, the most important. We all have the same size heads, therefore we all have the same size brains. EQ helps us use that brain and to use it effectively. So one's EQ is effectively one's ability to understand, use, and manage one's emotions in positive ways, to reduce stress, communicate effectively, empathize with others, overcome challenges, and resolve conflicts. So, sorry, if I could just minimize this. Yeah. So effectively EQ, and everyone in the room, if I ask you the question, do you suffer from stress? I'm sure you'll all say yes. Yes, we do. Of course we do, because if we didn't feel stress, we wouldn't know, we wouldn't have those things that prompt us towards performance. And everyone has to feel some stress to release those things that make us operate under stress. We all respond differently, and it's a question of how we respond that really separates, and dare I use this expression, separates the men from the boys or the girls from the ladies. So in effect, one of the things that EQ is all about is how you manage your stress. And it's important because it helps you manage all those emotions around converting your IQ into success. You can be the cleverest person in the world. If you don't have any EQ, that's exactly where you're going to stay. You're not going to really make it, because these two, and these are the two main Qs, they exist in tandem. And they're most effective when you've got a good balance between the two. Just as an aside, one of my hobbies is tennis. I sort of like played tennis competitively in my younger days. I still do, in fact. but not that competitive, obviously. So, and one of the things that that I've noticed is that in watching, and I've been to a lot of the major tournaments. So at Wimbledon, the first year I went to go and watch tennis at Wimbledon, I noticed that there were guys playing on the outside courts who were ranked like number 400 in the world, playing against each other. And being a connoisseur of tennis, I realized that these guys out there on these outside courts, ranked whatever they were like nobodies. But you know what? They were hitting the ball just as well as the big guys, you know, the top 5, the top 2, the top 1. In those days, it was people like John McEnroe and Bjorn Borg and those sort of people. But I also noticed in watching them that when they had the initial hit up, they were hitting the ball beautifully. The minute the game started, the match started, and things began to count, guess what? Their game fell apart, their stroke play became inconsistent and difficult, and they weren't playing at the same level as they were during the knockup. And that taught me very early on the impact that stress has on one's life and one's ability to perform. So let's not forget about stress. So what are the key attributes of EQ? So if I could just ask you all, please, just to pay attention to these 4 factors. It's only these 4 factors because I'm not sure how many people are in the webinar at the moment, but last time I looked, it was about 70. So we are going to have our work cut out in terms of going through all of these. So we'll try and reserve some of the topics for later sessions. But effectively, the key attributes of EQ are self-management, self-awareness, social awareness, and relationship management. So what are these things? Self-management, effectively, it's how you manage yourself, how you control your impulses, how you manage your stress, and whether you're able to manage those in healthy ways. If you're able to manage those in healthy ways, you're able to handle that constructively. It enables you to take initiative and to be able to perform at the top level. So the tennis players out on the outside courts weren't able to manage their stress, even though they had all the tools of the trade. They weren't able to manage. They weren't able to manage their stress to be able to get to the top level. It was only the top 10 or the top 20, I would say, that were able to manage stress. And then what it came down to on the court when they were playing and where it really mattered, it was a question of, just strategy or things like that changed matters. So that's self-management. But to be able to self-manage, you need to be aware of yourself. You need to have a very high level of self-awareness, because if you don't know how you react when you're emotional and, when certain things come about that are unexpected, puts you under stress, and we've all been there. We've all been there in the profession where we've been out on audits and the deadline's approaching, and then boom, something happens and it throws everything out. And now you're not sure if you're going to make the deadline because of this, or people work throughout the night. And I'm sure you've noticed that the person in charge of your job, or if you were in charge of the job, because we've all been through articles, how that person reacted effectively ensured whether the audit was completed within deadline time or not. So you do need to keep your wits about you, and to be able to do that, you need to be aware of the triggers that make you underperform. So with some people, when they hit with a stressful situation, they panic and they just shout at their staff and try to do all sorts of different things without doing things in a logical way. What that is very poor stress management, and that has a knock-on effect, because that person can't manage his or her emotions, which then impacts the rest of the team. And then the team are left feeling, oh boy, what do I do now? Do I do this? Do I not? Do I incur the wrath of this person? Do I get shouted at? Do I get made a fool of? What do I do? So it all becomes very touchy-feely. Your best leaders are the persons who are aware of their emotions and able to translate that into their emotional behavior to still take the initiative and empower their team to get to whatever outcomes they are looking for. But that's not enough. Within EQ, you also need to be socially aware. Now, what we mean by social awareness is those non-verbal cues that all of us have. And I'm sorry to say this, unless you're a psychopath, your face and your facial features and your emotions, the way you look, the way you smile, the way even your eyes look, all change depending on what emotions you're feeling. And you can't hide those. It's almost impossible to hide those. So the good leader is one who's very socially aware, who's able to pick up on social cues of that nature and see, like in a team environment, what are the team feeling? Are they feeling a little stressed out? Are they feeling unnerved? Are they feeling confident? Are they feeling threatened? All those sort of things come into play. And then you realize, what do you need to do to maximize that situation and to recognize that the dynamics within that group, we call it power dynamics. And that same power dynamic has application throughout your journey through your career, because you will get into situations where you're working, you have a very poor leader, or you have a very abusive leader, or you're in a toxic work environment. Being aware of those sorts of cues help you to understand the power dynamics and help you negotiate your way around those situations that you find yourself in. Because after all, we're all human beings and we're all different. And then finally, there's relationship management. You should know how to develop and maintain good relationships. Obviously, I mean, that goes without saying, but how often do we find that we don't have a good relationship either with our boss, so we never ever advance despite our obvious, or maybe not so obvious, abilities. Some people hold us down because they don't like us. Some people hold us down because they are biased in their view. But if you were able to be more socially aware and pick up on cues, you'd be able to manage those sorts of relationships to your advantage. They'll also enable you to communicate clearly within a group, inspire and influence others, and then obviously work well in a team. And I'm sure I'm going to get lots of questions, so I'm not going to speak too much about managing conflict. So I'm sure you've all encountered conflict in your professional lives. How you've dealt with it, well, let's see when we go into the group sessions. So if you all would, please, if you just call up the chat on your screens, and if you could, in the chat, indicate, because Vimbai is going to do some very quick mathematics today. No stress, Vimbai. So let's see how you manage that particular attribute. In the chat, if you could please indicate which of those 4 attributes you'd like us to discuss today. We'll probably only get through one, and maybe I can introduce the second choice, but I'd like to sort of like get a feel of which topic you'd like to deal with today. Self-management, which is how you manage your responses to emotions. Self-awareness, how you decide and how much you're aware of the emotions that trigger good or bad reactions within yourself. Social awareness, how socially aware are you? Are you able to detect nonverbal cues within the team? And then finally, relationship management is how you're able to work within a team and maximize the output of that team. So please, if you could all just indicate in the chat your preferences.
Per usual, Janice here. There's just a note from Rufaro, our next coach, saying that the next session will be on self-awareness.
Self-awareness.
So, yeah, so I guess that's 1, 3, or 4 today.
Okay, so, all right, great. So it's 1, 3, or 4. Thanks, Vimbai. As soon as you've got the results in the chat, Vimbai, just let me know, please.
Thanks, Joao. I will.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Joao, I'm just realizing we probably should have done a poll, but
Right.
from what I'm seeing, maybe we should start with number 4, relationship management. And then in future, I think to get more accurate results, we'll use a poll that will
That's fine. You know, it's
tally the
really
numbers.
just it was
Thanks.
really just to get an idea of what the majority of people were responding to. It needn't be accurate.
All
Okay.
right, thanks.
So let's go into relationship management. So before we get there, because we are now going to go into breakout groups, and I see there's about 100 people in the room. So that'll be roughly 10 groups of about 10 people. If you could please, when you go into your groups, identify a spokesman to feedback in plenary. Please allow others space to contribute. Don't hog the floor. So let's try. And if there is somebody in your group who's, we all have value to contribute, and let's not forget that. So if you see someone who's quiet, it's not because they don't have anything to contribute, it's because they're probably not getting given a chance. Invite them to contribute. And then agree on your conclusions. And I know this is going to be difficult, but please, if you could stick to time. So we're going to be discussing relationship management. And what I suggest is, because it's also important in a coaching environment, because it largely depends on what people themselves are feeling and the things that are important to you, in order for us to come to a sort of a coaching outcome. So I do want every group to feedback. So there's not going to be any selection. It's going to be all 10 groups feeding back. So we'll move on to the topic, and then Vimbai will push you all into groups. And if you please could only spend 10 minutes, and then we'll bring you back into plenary, and then we'll hear feedback, and then I will comment on the various little bits of feedback. Okay, so let me just move to the section. So there's relationship management. What I'd like you to do in your groups, please, is to discuss your experiences of encountering conflict in a team situation, and how and what methods and what ways you've devised to preempt these so as to use them constructively. Okay? Any questions from the floor before we move into our groups? Okay, let's move into the groups then, please, Vimbai, if we're ready for that. And you've got 10 minutes, so we'll call you back in roughly at 2:45. Can I stop sharing?
Yes, I'm just allocating the rooms, and then people will be in their rooms shortly.
Okay. So may I suggest, while Vimbai is just doing the room allocation, if you could just jot down the contents of the screen because I'm not sure whether we'll still be able to share that within the groups, within the various rooms.
Okay, I'm putting people into rooms, sure.
Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing my screen unless, if anybody.
Oh. Afternoon, everyone. Hi, is there anyone here?
Hi.
Let's see. I'm trying to see who's in the room. Okay, I suppose as a starting point, we need to select someone who will chair or who will give feedback when we get back into the session. So maybe we can start off with that and then we can start our discussion. What do you think? Yeah, you're all very quiet.
We are still here.
Oh, okay. Okay, so who is going to give feedback back onto the main session? I would have volunteered, but unfortunately, I'm also trying to manage those that are joining in. So it may become a bit much for me to handle. So if someone can take that up, please. Emmanuel, Ntokozo, Rufaro, Rumbi, Tariro, Teresa, Tino, Princess. If we can unmute ourselves and start the discussion, please, it would be helpful.
Yeah, I just joined, so trying to catch up.
Mm.
Oh, okay.
I thought we would be allocated to rooms.
We are in a room.
Which one?
Is this not in a room? Just wait.
We are the remnants, I think.
Is it? Okay, let me
Mhm.
see. Okay. Yeah. Oh, unassigned. Oh, okay.
Mhm.
All right. So let me add you to rooms then. Okay. Afternoon, everyone who's just joined. I'm moving you to some breakout rooms because there's a group discussion that's happening in the different rooms.
Oh,
So
thank
I'll
you.
move you. Yeah. Just confirming Reginald and Kitty Kumari. Are you in this call? Are you not in breakout rooms? Because I don't see your names. Okay, there we go.
Hi, sorry, my connection keeps dropping. So
Ah,
I've been in and out. Yeah.
okay. Which room have you been assigned to so I can keep pushing you to the same room?
Okay, so I was in room 4.
Room 4. Okay, let me put you in room
Yes.
4 then.
Thank
But I
you.
don't see your name now. It's not showing up as someone who needs to be assigned. Hi, Joao. I see you're here.
There's some interesting discussions going
Oh,
on. I've been visiting the
okay.
different breakout rooms. I suspect we're going to need a bit more time. So I don't know if you
Okay.
can communicate to them to maybe take an extra 5 minutes.
I don't even know how to do that,
Oh, okay. Not to worry. Not to worry.
but I can increase the time.
Yeah, I think let's increase the time by 15 minutes, by
Um,
5 minutes. There's
let
some
me
really
see.
interesting discussions going
I
on.
actually can't show, or at least I don't know how it's done
Okay.
because I'm not seeing. So the option that allowed me to do that. Okay, I can keep them open. Okay, cool.
Excellent.
There's a pop-up that said breakout rooms closed. So
Yes,
it
I see.
allowed me
I've
to.
got the same pop-up. So let's
Okay,
just
cool.
give them an extra 5 minutes and then bring them all back in.
Okay, so we close them at 15:47. No, is that 5? Yeah, 15:47.
Yes.
No, 48.
48.
So I ended up not joining any breakout rooms because I'm admitting additional participants and yeah, I'm just trying to manage things. I think next time it would be great to have someone in
Yes.
IT who can then
Yeah.
be playing that role. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I
it's
agree.
a very good attendance.
It is indeed.
Mm, mm. And
I
thank
think
you.
it's a topic that is close to a lot of people's hearts.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it ended up being 10 groups.
Yes. So there's 10 of about 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's okay.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how to get back into the groups. So
Okay. If you do you have the more option at the bottom?
yeah.
Okay, let me first let this who have come in just into rooms. But
Okay, I
if
got
you
it.
go
I
to
got it.
more
I
and then
got
you
it.
go to breakout rooms. Okay, you got it. Cool.
Good.
Hi, Rudo. I'm assigning you to a breakout room. There's discussions happening in there.
Thank you.
Belinda, I'm assigning you to a breakout rooms for some discussions. Hey, Jen.
Hi, are we the first ones back? Can we close them now? We can close.
Hansina Shorty, Farina 1548. He says there's still
Oh,
some discussions going on, yeah.
okay. So what
But
do we do?
good attendance. Oh, we just wait around. I ended up not getting to a breakout room, by the way, because I'm busy with
Oh,
assigning,
I know.
admitting people and assigning. Hi, Sime. I'm assigning you to a breakout room for group discussions that are happening.
So what do I do? Because I had told people to leave, but anyway.
But they're not here. Or are they these people who I'm assigning back? I
I
hope not.
think so. I think so. So I think because I was in breakout room 3, just bring them back. It's okay.
All right. But I don't see the option to just bring one group back.
Mm,
You don't go to close all rooms.
okay. Can you assign me back?
Okay, to room 3.
3.
Now I can't see your name.
So
But you can actually join. Try Ukainda. Have you been to breakout rooms before?
okay, there we go. I can see it.
All right, cool.
So Hannah, hi. So apparently we'd been given 2 more minutes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Oh, so ndova ndiri busy kureassign. Sure, I'm about to close off the breakout rooms.
So how does it work? We have to rejoin.
No. It's okay because it's just 1 more minute left.
Oh, okay. All
Yeah,
right.
before we close and bring everyone back in.
Right. Thanks.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So I was in group 4, and I think after the 10 minutes, we just didn't know whether it was going to automatically take us back or we're going to remain in there. I don't know. So I left the meeting, then re-joined.
Sorry, and then I put you in another group. Apologies. But I'm closing the breakout rooms now, so everyone should be back.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Have you closed them, Wimbai? You're muted.
I have closed, but it's got a countdown from 60 seconds.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so in about 30 seconds, everyone will be back in.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, Joao. I think people are back from the breakout rooms, and you can proceed.
Sorry, I was cardinal error. I was on mute.
Yeah, thanks.
So, just in general, how did you guys find that? Was that quite uncomfortable?
Very.
Yeah, it would be. These things are never easy, and we chose a topic which is quite a difficult one, but an important one. So I think what we're going to do for the next 20 minutes or so is to just listen to feedback from all the different groups. I visited some, I couldn't get to all, but the ones that I did visit, there was some very interesting stuff going on there. And I think it's useful that we all share just a summary of it. So if could each group spokesman please feedback. You're restricted to 5 minutes tops. If you could do it shorter, so much the better for all of us. So let's start. I think we'll just go numerically. Let's start with group 1, if we may.
All right. Thank you so much, Joao, for that. So in group 1, what came up in our discussion really regarding, experiences in encountering conflict were issues to do with gender, race, age, and I guess that then speaks to, matters of diversity and inclusiveness. And then talking to lessons learned with some of these conflicts is coming back to appreciation and understanding of one's background, so the relationship that one may have with their counterparts, and then talking to appreciation of body language when one is communicating to the next person. So you're looking at facial cues where it's face to face and use of hand gestures, body movement. And then in online meetings, I mean, obviously nowadays we've got this video conferences going on. There's also that need to follow through on one's voice tone to try and preempt what they are then trying to put across. And then ultimately, as a bottom line to everything, is then talking to communication and clarity of a message put across, then furthermore, the comprehension of that message that's then been relayed. So yeah, that sums up what we came up with from group 1. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. That's very useful feedback. Could I just ask you, could you maybe share the context of some of the conflicts that people were sharing? Because I think that'll also be quite useful, especially as regards online meetings, which I hadn't thought about. And thank you for raising that.
All right. No, thank you again for that, Joao. So rapidly, I mean, with the one on gender, race, and age, it was a situation between, workmates, physically, definitely, conduct. Then the other thing that came up as well was with regards to meeting of deadlines and how people would then have to have managed that beforehand, then resulting with the ultimate conflict at hand. Then the online one, unfortunately, there wasn't a particular example speaking to it, but it came up in the appreciation of body language and how as well it then extends to an online meeting, then hence the need then to just appreciate one's voice tone.
Thanks, Anna. Yes, the online meetings is a very difficult one, and I must admit, one that I struggle with, because it's very difficult to pick up cues on the other side of a screen. Plus, people are able to manage backgrounds and that sort of thing. But I think you can tell the most sort of basic of emotions that come out of an online meeting, i.e. anger, frustration, or impatience. Those kind of cues you can pick up on an online meeting. But the more subtle ones, the ones where someone sort of like has that sneering look, where they don't fully agree with what you're saying, etc., that'll be a little bit more difficult to pick up, I would imagine. But I think I hear what you're saying in terms of those sort of conflicts. And in terms of solutions, well, I think probably what we'll do is let's summarize all the solutions towards the end, or tips that different individuals have come up with to arrive at that sort of thing, because that helps all of us in a group environment. So let's move on to group 2. Sorry, Anna, is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, I think you've got everything. No, thank you so much for the platform.
Thanks, Anna. Right, let's go to group 2 now.
Thank you. So group 2, we sort of looked at one particular example and then answered the different questions according to that example. So we got a typical conflict in an audit scenario where manager commits on a WhatsApp message that they will be delivering their accounts tomorrow. And partner is quite happy with that, but of course it's now 10 days later and the accounts are nowhere inside. So of course he plays coy when he's reminded that you committed to submitting these 24 hours after we spoke the last time we exchanged messages on WhatsApp. And he just looked confused and he's not responding to any WhatsApp messages that are coming from the partner ever since. So yeah, so there is conflict and he is underperforming because he's not delivering what he has promised he would do. And in terms of preempting that, what could have been done differently? Well, we thought communication, as was mentioned by the previous group, is important, especially if it's done right at the start of an engagement or the relationship. You know, this is who we are in the zoo, and these are the expectations we expect from each other. So manager could say his expectations: I want to be mentored, coached, be handheld in certain matters, whatever. And partner would also say, look, I would expect you to, you know, commit to delivering what you say you would deliver in the timeframes agreed. So that is important, to have the rules of engagement communicated upfront. And it's very important to also communicate face-to-face. Yes, the commitments was done up on WhatsApp, perhaps even on email, but sometimes face-to-face helps to read body language and certain nuances that we cannot capture online. So it's important to preempt that by maybe setting up a fixed regular meeting once a week or so, where you see each other and you know you can gauge whether you're on the same page, working on the same wavelength. And I think if this person had been working, if the partner had been working with this manager for some time, he probably knows that he tends to do this when he's under a lot of pressure. So perhaps he could have preempted that by saying, look, if you feel like, you know, you're getting overwhelmed or whatever, please give me a shout. I'm happy to help. Or at least I'm happy to take certain things off your desk, whatever. So we did note that you might then start judging someone or behaving in a way that, you know, you've known them to behave, and yet people can also change. So you have to be very careful with that. Where you know, if you have prior experience with somebody and you just treat them based on your last experience. So in terms of lessons learned in this particular case, communicate sooner. So if when this manager did not deliver the following day as expected, partner should have just picked up the phone and call him and say, look, what's going on? Are you okay? Where are those accounts? In a soft, sort of friendly way, in a way, and get on top of things sooner, so this doesn't mothball into something else. Yeah, I think that's it from group 2. I hope I've captured everything.
Great, yeah, so that's great feedback. Thank you so much. I think just a few questions on that. Did the manager, and obviously some questions about how that person became a manager, but did the manager speak to the team and sort of like agree that this could be done by tomorrow?
From the facts given, it didn't sound like it, because he seemed to be corresponding with the partner on WhatsApp. And I mean, you know, WhatsApp, it's almost real time. So it seemed like he just committed to tomorrow.
Right. Okay. So that's an important lesson. And I'm glad you brought up that particular example, because this is something that you will always encounter in the commercial as well as the professional environment, is people taking it upon themselves to make a commitment on behalf of other people without really knowing what's involved. And how you deal with that is really moot, because clearly the person who's making those commitments is trying to curry favor with his superior and doesn't care too much about what the rest of the team thinks, even whether it's possible or not, but it's just trying to be good, but it's bounced back. So in that context, I would say that it would be useful, to, yes, all of those things, improve the communication, etc. But how many people within the group felt that it would be worthwhile to maybe have a coffee with this manager and say, look, this is actually leading nowhere. And in actual fact, it's made you look worse in front of the partner than was intended. Maybe we need to have some group session and we can all speak about where it went.
Thanks for that. Yeah.
So those are all things. And, when I sum up totally at the end, I am going to talk to you about the other Q, which is, absolutely, Moses. The partner was also very hands-off, wasn't he? Because he's obviously got other things on his mind. But yeah, this is a comedy of errors, and this often happens. And then the blame game starts. And if you're on the wrong side of the blame game, and this is where identifying non-verbal cues and seeing who's going to behave like what under what circumstances, if you don't preempt that and if you don't prepare yourself, you could be the one taking the fall for somebody else's misdemeanor. So these are all areas that we need to be aware of in our relationships to understand who behaves. So now this team has been burnt, so they understand exactly how the manager operates, and they'll be more on their guard the next time. Great stuff. We're getting some really good stuff out of the groups here. Let's move on to group 3. And Nyasha, unless you want to add anything.
No, we're done. Thank you.
Thanks, Nyasha. Let's move on to group 3.
Hi, João. Before group 3 proceeds, just to let you know, there was an issue with the numbering of the groups. So if we can just ask the group leaders in the different groups to raise their hand and provide their feedback, because there were a couple of group 1s and a couple of group 2s.
Oh,
so.
I see. Okay, great.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
Okay,
So
thanks.
let's have a volunteer for the next group.
Thanks, Rimbai. So this is Janice. I think we were in group 3 because that's what it said when we went into the group. So we managed to have 3 scenarios, and as you can imagine, given the short time frame, we then didn't drill down as deeply, but I think we got enough to be able to share something. So the first issue was a conflict relating to managing upwards. So this the person who contributed the story was saying they have the person who they're reporting to, who they have to manage in terms of an expectation gap. So that superior is expecting certain things to happen on the project based on their prior experience, but this team of consultants have a different approach and view given what they are seeing on the ground. And this has been causing friction. They have tried to speak to this superior, but they are just not getting it. What they have then tried to do, they are currently in the middle of trying to negotiate this conflict, but they've brought in a third party who is independent to try and mediate to get to a solution. So this is something that is still underway, so we do not know how this will end. The second story was a person who started a new job, and they were saying that they usually experience conflict each time they start a new job because subordinates are apprehensive and they have preconceived ideas about her. And perhaps these subordinates would have applied for the job and not gotten it. So there's a bit of resistance there, or they're nervous because with a change in leadership, it's a major change which might affect them as much as it's affecting this lady who's also joining a new team. And what she says she did with her last appointment, she had one-on-ones with all her subordinates in a manner to try and calm them down. And she also demystified herself by sharing something that they might not know about her, or that they might not expect her to share about herself. And the result of that is it has resulted in the gelling with her subordinate or team happening a whole lot faster than she's experienced in the past. So in other words, that gelling process was easier than she has ever experienced. Number 3 was someone who was saying she is in a team, and in the team there's a boss and 3 subordinates, but these subordinates are heads of their respective departments. And her boss causes conflict between these 3 by using the divide and rule leadership. And there's been a real struggle between them, and the divide and rule is so that the 3 do not trust each other. The 3 have tried to speak to each other, but it's not really working like it should. With this third one, Joao, we didn't get to the solution. So perhaps if you can take note of this one to see how we can help this particular individual, because she says this is something that's really bugging her at this particular point. Thank you.
That is some really great stuff. And the person who gets into a new job, and there's a little bit of apprehension amongst all the subordinates, and the solution that was given is a great tip. In fact, I'm going to hang up my boots and invite that person to take over my job. Fantastic. Well done. Yes, with the team boss, the divide and rule side, can I just say that, you know, it's what that is. There's a power dynamic, as I said earlier, in any group situation, in any team situation. And when that power dynamic is humming, if for use of a better word, then there's no need to have divide and rule. Where the boss is confident in his own abilities, there's also no need for divide and rule. The only time this becomes a problem is when there's the wrong person in the wrong job and you have some insecurity. And my only advice in situations like this is for the 3 subordinates is to knock down their personal ambitions, and for them to each one-on-one, not as a group, because then it looks like you're ganging up. I would suggest that one-on-one, and if I was one of those people, I'd be reaching out to the other 2 individually and saying, let's have some coffee, let's chat about this and see how best we can do this, because very clearly this is what is happening. And try to come to some sort of a truce between the 3, or at least between one and the other 2, so that this doesn't happen, because that manager is not going to last very long. You know, the only time that person survives is when he's able to continue setting off the 3 against each other. And we all know that from the political environment in our country. Yeah, team building, Moses, as well, could work. But it all depends on the boss guy sanctioning that. And I think that if he were a psychopath, he would probably discourage that. But that's certainly worthwhile trying. Great stuff. Any further comments, Janice?
That is all from us. Thanks, Joao.
Fantastic. Good work from your group.
Thank you.
Let's go to the next group.
Hi, Joao. I'll go next for our group. We went around and everyone in the group had a scenario that they've experienced, but we'll just pick a few of them to share. So our first scenario was whereby there was a conflict in the board meeting, and our group member provided some feedback, which a department head took very personally. And they took it personally to a point whereby they started taking it as a personal attack, and the discussion became quite personal, which was during the board meeting. And what our group member did in this scenario is they took the discussion on a one-on-one outside the board meeting, and they managed to talk through what the feedback was. And in their discussion, she managed to let the department head know that this was a company-related issue, business-related and business-motivated, and it was not personal at all. And once that one-on-one discussion happened, the department head managed to actually see that the objective was to progress the company, and they managed to move ahead. So this was how it was resolved. I think, Joao, what you can help us with here is how to deal with that conflict during the board meeting. After I've gone through the other scenarios. Our second scenario was feedback, performance feedback, and disagreement regarding a quadrant on the balance scorecard for our group members' team member. So the team member was dissatisfied with the rating they received on their scorecard, and to communicate this dissatisfaction, they sent an email involving quite a lot of stakeholders who were not necessarily party to this discussion. So that created a lot of extra noise. However, what our team member did is that they took the discussion off email and had a one-on-one discussion with the disgruntled employee, whereby they explained what was going on. And the key feedback from our team member was that they maintained calmness in this discussion and presented a level-headed demeanor whilst talking to their colleague. And what then happened in this case is that the disgruntled employee understood how the feedback was provided, and they took it to the line manager, who then understood what the actions are, and they actually ended up agreeing on what actions that employee needed to take to turn around the rating that they had received. So in conclusion for that, the escalation ended at the right level. It did not end up going to the excessive email chain that had included unnecessary people. And then another point was stakeholder dissatisfaction with an underperforming employee. So several departments were not impressed with the level of service they were receiving from an underperforming employee, and they provided feedback to the senior manager. And whilst this feedback was well received by the senior manager did not get the underperformers' side of view. So this was a one-sided feedback, and the narrative went on like that for a couple of months until there was actually a mediation meeting that was held. And at that point, the underperformer managed to also express the issues they were facing in order for them to do their job well. And also they managed to understand some of the feedback that was being given, which they were not aware of. So what that did is it allowed both parties to understand what's affecting the performance, and also for the underperformer to also understand where they were not performing well, because awareness would result in them correcting it. So I think overall in the discussions we had, what we noticed was that communication is important, and it has to be effective communication at the right levels, at the right involvement, which will help these conflicts that people have faced. And that's most of it from our group.
Thanks, Evelyn.
Thank you.
That was great feedback and good discussions your group had, I must say. Without knowing too much about the board meeting and what actually happened, it's actually quite difficult just with what's on the face of it. But this is exactly where one-on-one coaching becomes really useful, is when someone is experiencing problems of this nature, you can speak in a lot more detail and actually get to understand it. But I would say that just on the face of it, you've always got to deal with the moment. They call it mindfulness. Deal with the moment, not with all the noise surrounding that factor. And I think that if the personalities understood each other and took the time to look at those verbal cues and see what actually is a red flag in front of somebody and what isn't a red flag, you would then be able to use your EQ to not raise that red flag so that that person doesn't go into, you know, overdrive. And that's exactly what we've been talking about today is, you know, people going into overdrive, unable to control their emotions and reacting in an inappropriate manner. Fancy that in a board meeting, department heads fighting. You know, it's just unheard of, you know. But so I would say that, you know, it would be very useful for the team to sit down generally and have, somebody mentioned team buildings before. Team buildings are a very useful way of getting to know your person, the people that you work with, and the things that drive them and the things that tick them off and that sort of thing. So yes, and I also agree, you know, Moses, thank you for your comments. That is, I'd agree with that. Okay, we are running a little bit over. Vimbai, am I able to use some of the Q&A time?
Yes, if there's groups that need to provide feedback, we can use the Q&A and then close the Q&A time and then close off, yes.
Thanks, Vimbai. Okay, let's move on to the next group without any further ado. Thanks very much, Evelyn.
Okay, I will come in. So our approach was slightly different. We didn't really share like individual cases, but rather we focused on tips based on our experience at work. So we won't be sharing like specific cases, but what people felt were the key tips. So we focused more on top tips on developing a relationship that contribute to healthy team dynamics. So the first one, which was raised, is listening skills. And the key point there was whenever someone is talking, one should listen, and listening with an intention to understand and not to respond. Because from their experience, if you listen to someone discussing something or telling you something and you've got the answers in your head, maybe you risk missing the key points that are being discussed by the person. So key point there on listening is listen with intention to understand the situation. And then on listening also, it also comes hand in hand with respect. Because if you are listening to someone with respect, you respect their opinion, you respect their views, and you respect whatever they are saying, whether you agree or you don't agree with it. But respect will also enhance your listening skills. And then another top tip discussed was making time for each other. I think I heard also another group explaining on this one to say you need to create time to understand the background of each and every member, be it work related, be it personal, because either of the two might affect the performance of that person in a team. The third point raised, I spoke about listening, respect, also the issue of clarity, to say in every team, it's important to have clarity on team goals because it helps us to work well. And also we then sort of further expanded the question to say, where do we draw the boundaries in as far as relationships are concerned? Because if you are in a team, you work together, sometimes relationships can extend to even personal, to after hours. And the key point raised there was, as long as the end game is known by everyone, we can maintain relationship boundaries for an effective team. And the last one was to give everyone a chance, business, personality. Everyone should get a chance to contribute because personalities differ. There are some people who need more probing for them to contribute, but when they contribute, they come up with very meaningful and useful points. So we have to understand each other, and some people are very loud, some people are quiet, but at the end of the day, what they contribute really matters than who they are. So that's all from our, and also, to understand each and every member's strengths and weaknesses. It also helps in team dynamics. That's all from our group.
Fantastic, Kadzai. Your group came up with some real gems there. The first one, you know, listening skills. It sounds like a fundamental, but so many people forget it. And that's exactly what EQ requires. To have your EQ, you need to be in the moment. You need to be focusing on the individual, not listening to your phone or reading your WhatsApp messages or thinking about who you're going to go dating tonight or whatever, whatever that other thought process is. And that's truly listening. So that's a fantastic observation and a really, really top tip. The other one was giving everybody an opportunity, understanding the teams and the strengths and weaknesses. Again, it's all down to positive EQ, because if you don't take the time out to know your team members, you're never going to know, and you're always going to have a situation of potential conflict on your hands. So very good top tips. And the one analogy, and I know I'm taking time, but I'm sorry, I do talk too much. The one analogy that you can always take, always remember, and this is something that us Africans know about, is that if you see a lion in the bush, just because you don't eat lions and have no intention of eating the lion, doesn't mean that he's not going to eat you. Okay? So always remember that analogy, because what's good for you may not be good for the next person. What's important to you may not be important to the next person. So always try to see things with the other person's eyes and hear things with the other person's ears, for you to come up with a balanced sort of way of introducing a team dynamic. But fantastic stuff from your group. Thanks, Kudzai. Can we move on to the next group?
I'll go. I think we're in group 4, and I think we also did what the previous speaker did. We only touched on some points, not specific scenarios. So I think the first one was usually conflicts as a result of different opinions. And if you know that, then you're in a better position to say, what's causing this is because I have my way of thinking and the other person is a way of thinking. And if you could, if it's a meeting, if you know that there's going to be probably a conflict in a meeting or something, if you could go there without a mind of fighting or winning the battle, but to be there for a conversation, to speak your facts, lay your facts on the ground and argue as things are, rather than being emotional. Try to leave the emotional side out of things so that you can discuss the issue and resolve it properly. Then also establish a middle ground for the conversation to go well. I think one main thing that was also brought up was communication. You need to be mindful of how you communicate the message. It's how you communicate the message to the person that's listening, that they will probably try to see things from your perspective rather than trying to force things on someone. Then I think if you also know there's going to be some conflicts, it's possible, if possible, you can have an independent person might come to just, who is objective, who is not affected by what's being discussed there, so that they can try rationalize and help you. Another thing is, if it's a meeting and you have the opportunity maybe to have a side meeting with the person before the main big meeting, it might also be helpful to discuss of the expectations, how you're going to tackle this, which might help in discussing the issue when both of you are level-headed, and it might actually have a better outcome. So I think those were the main points that we discussed.
Thanks, Rutenda. I'm loving coaching you guys. There's such wonderful ideas that come out. The ego question that you brought up. Absolutely. Why do we always have to be right? As long as the ultimate objective is achieved, it doesn't matter where it comes from, really. So fantastic stuff. Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm just rushing through because I know that we've still got, I think, 4 groups to go and we're nearly out of time. So let's move on to the next group. Thanks, Rutendo.
Okay, so maybe I can go for our group. So I mean, we also didn't have a specific scenario, and we were probably not feeling open enough to share our conflict scenarios. But I think just a couple of topics that we then discussed, or probably tips, is I guess the importance of embracing differing views in times of conflict, allowing for obviously sufficient time for people to share their views when we are in a time of conflict. So even if I don't agree with someone, or I do allow them the time and the space to actually share their views. And then we talked about managing our emotions in times of conflict. So how do I react when I'm emotional? So do I continue a conversation or an argument if my emotions have come into play, or I probably need to step back, or possibly just breathe and pick it up a little bit later? And then someone asked the question, well, is it okay if I just decide to walk away from the conflict as well? Or should I just leave it? And then so maybe that's a question that you can answer. And then we talked about how I think a couple of us in the group just talked about how we generally have a fear of conflict. So we tend to avoid situations where we have to be in arguments or disagreements with anyone. So we tend to avoid it, which, I mean, like we discussed in the group, that is probably not the way to go. And yeah, so those are some of just the key topics that we talked about. I don't know, Thandi and Tatenda, if there's anything that I've left out. Thanks.
Thanks, Tatenda. Again, it's so, and I like the approach. One doesn't need to give examples, and the question of managing one's emotions, again, that again speaks to EQ, is knowing where your trigger buttons, your personal triggers, and also knowing your team's trigger buttons, isn't it? So that's a great contribution. And also, embracing different views. The ego thing is definitely a big part of corporate life, and because people with egos tend to get rewarded, but that type of behavior should be changed, and it's up to us to change that, because we're all in those organizations, so we need to push back on it. In terms of walking away from a conflict, I certainly would not recommend that, because all that'll do, it'll be like the wound festering. You do need to approach it in a way, not head on, and not in a total conflict zone as in Russia, Ukraine, but keep it fair, and you need to talk it through. So I certainly wouldn't walk away. Tatenda, thank you very much for your group's contributions. All the groups have been so great. So I look forward to listening to the next group, who is...
Sure. I'm cognizant of time.
Yeah.
So I see we've got about 2 minutes left. And I do appreciate that the rest of the groups would like to share. Maybe what we can do to close off is to ask if there's anyone that has got a burning question. They can unmute themselves and ask, and then you can assist us with that, and then we close off. And hopefully for future sessions, we can either have them for much longer or see how best we can structure so that everyone is able to share their input. Thanks.
Thanks, Vimbai.
Yeah. So just checking from everyone on the call, is there someone that's got a burning question? You can raise your hand, and if you're recognized, you can unmute yourself and ask any question that you'd like to ask. Yes, Tatenda, you can unmute yourself. Thanks.
So the topic is relationship management. Is relationship only conflict, or there is more to relationships? That's my question.
Great question, Tatenda. And no, it's not only conflict management, but it's one part of it. And I only used the conflict example because it would bring out all of the features of having how to manage your relationships, because it speaks to understanding verbal cues, understanding who's in your team, being strategic about your teamwork. Don't go into the workplace, like, I'm the warrior on a chariot and I'm going to conquer everything. Be strategic. Understand who's in your team, the power dynamics within that team, what drives the boss, because we have bosses and we have bosses, and some bosses are fair and some are unfair. But the more we understand about them, and certainly on a previous session, I did recommend that good reading would be a thing called Snakes in Suits, because that talks to how psychopaths behave in the workplace, how they take credit on behalf of others, etc., etc. So no, it's not only relationship management, is also about other things, but it's brought to the fore by conflict management. Does that answer your question, Tatenda?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Sorry, promise.
Thank you, João.
So I think...
do you have any last words so we can close off?
Okay, before you close, just some last words. Just in terms of the whole subject of EQ, I know we only dealt with one small little portion of it, but I did promise to talk about RQ and how best to maintain your EQ. So how best to maintain your EQ is to try to be as authentic as possible. Always take your authentic self. Don't try to be something you're not, because if you're something you're not, if you put that image forward, guess what? People are going to be reading those emotional cues and treating you differently. And then they can be forgiven for treating you unfairly because you've given a false sort of picture of yourself. Be authentic. People know, they'll read your cues, you'll read their cues, and you'll work into the team dynamic quite competently. So be yourself is the first thing. Then the RQ question, that's the response quotient. So I want to leave you all with that thought. The response quotient is in your brain, in your subconscious, there's always a response to some sort of an issue. And that's broken down into two. It's either I can or I can't. Whatever you do, always be alive to the RQ, and the RQ should always be I can. And if I can't, let me find out how I can. Don't give up. Always use the I can. All right, so that's your situation. You guys have been a fantastic audience. I've really enjoyed today. I look forward to the next one. And Vimba, you're going to have to give me more time. This is just not enough time. But thank you very much for hosting ICAS, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the future.
We definitely need more time, João. Thank you so much for your time and for you taking us through the session. And I hope everyone on the call found the session valuable, learning from the other people that were in the group with you, learning from our coach, and just listening to the feedback that we received from other groups. I hope we also managed to learn, what to apply in managing our relationships. And so in closing, I'd like to thank, first of all, the ICAS Secretariat for helping us put this session together. I'd like to thank the WeCAN Committee for also organizing such a wonderful platform for us. And most importantly, thank you, João, for taking your time this afternoon and really sharing your thoughts with us and guiding us through this discussion. We really appreciate that. And we look forward to having future discussions with you. I also acknowledge Rufaro Maunzebebe, who's on this call, who's also partnered with us for these sessions. And we look forward to having a session with her in the future. I'm also making a call whilst on this call for anyone who wants to partner with us for these group coaching sessions to please reach out to the WeCAN committee so that we can provide, this platform and benefit from it. And finally, but not least, I'd like to thank you all for the time that you made this afternoon to be part of this session. And thank you for sharing your stories with us. I really thank you. And please, we look forward to your feedback. Please give feedback to the WeCAN committee. Let us know how we did. Let us know how we can improve. And let us know any future topics that you'd like to cover. So with that, we bring the session to an end. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, goodbye.
Thanks, Joel. This was
Joel. Thank you so
absolutely
much.
fantastic. We appreciate this, and we'll give you the feedback as we get it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Thank
You all
you.
take care and you have a jolly good weekend.
Thank you. You
Joel.
too.
Bye
Bye.
now.
Bye-bye.
Well done, Vimbai. Thanks for your help.
Thank you.
No, thanks to you. Thank you
Cheers.
so much, Joel. Have a good evening.
You too.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.